In today's episode, we're speaking to Daren Smith. Daren is a film producer, author, and founder of Craftsman Creative, where he shares his experience with creative entrepreneurs and business owners to help them build and grow their awareness, engagement, revenue using his movie framework. Let's speak to Daren and find out how he changed his life by changing his mindset. Let's find out. And remember, if you want to upgrade your money mindset, then click on the link www.millionairefoundations.com and watch my free training. Welcome. This is Gull, your money mindset expert. And today I'm so excited. We have the amazing Daren Smith. Welcome, Daren.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to be here.
It's such a pleasure to have you, Daren. Daren, everyone's heard your intro. They know how fabulous you are, but please, in your own words, tell everybody what it is that you do.
Well, it's hard and it changes on every single podcast I go on. So I'm a film producer by trade, but really a creator at heart. So I've been in music and film and television for like my whole adult life, but also in music since I was a young kid. So creativity is flowing through the veins here, but I work as a film producer. And when I'm not producing, I do consulting with creative entrepreneurs who run businesses and are trying to get unstuck and figure out their way forward.
Awesome. Fantastic. So talk us through this journey of yours then. How does, what was your musical journey and how did you end up going into this profession? This is a hard profession to be in, and let alone to have success and to be financially viable. And people just see the few rock stars that come out and they make millions and so forth. That's the creme of the creme. There are so many amazing musicians who can barely make ends meet on using their talent. So talk us through your journey. How have you found this musical industry, which can be your enemy or your friend or a foe, depending on where you are?
Yeah, the through line through all of it is that I knew what I wanted, and what I wanted was to not have people tell me what I can and can't do with my life. And so
that's a calling for an entrepreneur. That's more than a musician. That's just an entrepreneur.
We all resonate with that one, right?
Yeah.
So, from the time I was a newborn, I was going to the Sacramento Jazz Jubilee with my grandparents every single year. So I grew up on jazz music. I was the weirdo in high school that didn't listen to Ben Folds and alternative music and all the other bands that were big in the 90s. I was listening to jazz music.
I didn't listen to either, by the way. So it's okay.
I had to catch up years later in college. So when I got to college, I went there on a saxophone performance scholarship. So I was a saxophone player, jazz sax player. I was already a professional musician in that I had been paid money to play saxophone. So I'd started combo groups and played at gigs and had made money as a performer. And as soon as I got to university, I realized I didn't want that path, because what they told me was the only thing you can do is study saxophone. You have to practice 3-4 hours a day, if not more. And you're going to either be a teacher or performer. Those are kind of the two paths. And I said, no, thanks. I don't actually enjoy either of them that much to try that hard. I just like playing jazz music. And so I kind of gave up on that and found my way to live sound. And I loved it. Fell in love with doing the engineering and the live aspect and working with bands. And I felt like I was a member of the band, because I would sit there and I would bring up the reverb, or I would change the tonality of different instruments to make them sound better in the room. I just loved the musicality of that role. But when I was finishing up my college time, my internship was with a gentleman named Mike McDonough, who did post-production sound, which I did not know what that was. But he was the guy putting all of the explosion sounds and the car screeches and the gunshots into different movies. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. For one, I still loved the technical aspect of working with a soundboard and an editing system, but the hours were 9 to 5. I wasn't touring on the road. I wasn't working nights and weekends. Like by that point, I had a wife and I had children, and I didn't want to be on the road for 11 months out of the year. So I transitioned into film at the end of university, started my own creative business called Smith Studios, which was post-production sound. And that led me a winding road from being a sound guy to being on set to writing and now producing. So I've been producing for about 11 years full time and love it.
And what kind of movies do you produce?
So they're all independent features. I've done 3 to date, and I just started working on another one a week ago. So we're shooting in September. And they're all like under $2 million. 2 of them were shot in Utah, and one last year we did in South Africa. So I was in Cape Town for 7 weeks doing an independent movie out there, which was amazing. So they're all independent movies, self-financed. So it's not studio financed or financed by a distributor. They're independently financed, written and directed by independent filmmakers, and they are just the most fun you could ever have for a job, being on set every day.
Now, I ask you this because it's difficult enough to have a foothold in the film industry. It doesn't matter which part of the world you're in. It's a very cutthroat, competitive field, let alone to be an entrepreneur with unpredictability being the center of focus. I mean, and the unpredictability is part of every entrepreneur's life. It's just you can't get away from it. But it's almost like, you can swim with the sharks, or you can swim with the really deadly sharks. And you seem to be swimming the really deadly sharks in terms of, the finances and, and making sure that the stability is there, because you still need, people forget entrepreneurs have families too. And if you're the main breadwinner, I am too. So your main concern is, okay, making sure that everyone else is taken care of, along with while you fulfill your creative endeavors and all your nicks and nacks and taking risks. We are risk takers, we do take risks. How do you balance all of that? How do you take care of bringing the stability home to your wife and your family, your children, and still feeding off your creativity and doing what makes you happy?
Yeah, it takes a little bit of being like unrelenting, like just saying, this is what I need for my life, and this is how I want things to work. And then finding those that resonate with that. And so what's interesting is I really actively don't refer to the money people or the investors as sharks, or the business people or the money, because they're really creative partners. They're just creative in a different way. So they're creative with money, and they're thinking about how they're going to diversify and how they're going to make their returns, and being really strategic in that way, the same way I'm strategic about how are we going to get this location for the budget that we have, or how are we going to give this costume designer enough budget so that she feels really good about the work that she's doing. And so that mental shift or mindset shift around, these aren't just investors and I need their money so I can go and spend it to make art. It's saying that they're collaborators, they're partners in this endeavor. And as soon as I shifted from going out and trying to find money in any way possible to finding the people who are already interested in what I'm doing, A, it became a lot easier to raise money. And B, it's a lot more fun. We never have these kind of shark eat minnow or head-butting situations, because we're all on the same page before we even spend the first dollar. So I think that's such an important thing to realize that, okay, I've got an outcome here. I want a good experience for everybody. I want to make something that costs $1 million. And I ultimately want to return more than $1 million to the financiers who put up the money for it. Well, that's a lot of things to balance and juggle. But if you're kind of unrelenting about it, then you can make it happen. It might take 12 years like it took me to produce my first feature film, but we finally got there, and my gosh, it worked out great. So I think it's a mindset thing.
100%. I mean, I believe in any business, for any strategy or any kind of way forward, it's 80% mindset and 20% strategy. I mean, any business. So it works across the board. And you just highlighted the exact thing. When you are out to get money, and if you see those people as sharks, it's going to be very difficult to attract the right sort of partners. But when you see them as collaborators, somebody who can really build a vision with you, and of course investors need ROIs, they need to have money coming back, then it takes the pressure off, and it becomes a complete different ball game, and it becomes fun at the same time. How do you handle the stress of making sure that you do produce ROI? Because once you've made a film, you can't, obviously you can have probability stacked in your favor, but nothing's 100%. How do you handle that stress, and how do you work on your mindset when you're thinking, okay, I've taken $1 million from this individual, a couple of million from these couple of investors, they do need the money back and they're fully on board, but we need to make something that's, one, I'm happy with, and two, we can get ROI back. How do you do that?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked this question, because it's an essential part for any entrepreneur to understand money and understand investors, whether or not you intend to take on investors, whether or not you tend to grow that way, you'll never be able to do it if you think of it or approach it as an artist does. So the way an artist approaches raising money for a film is they get themselves really pumped up and they find a project that they're super passionate about. And then they bring that passion to the table and they're presenting and they're doing all the things and they're putting on the dog and pony show. And they're hoping to convince an investor to take on some of that passion or buy into that. This artist has enough passion to pull this off. That's not how investors think. And so really the answer to your question is it was understanding what investors need. And then again, being unrelenting about giving it to them. And so as right now I'm in the middle of raising a film fund. I'm raising a $5 million fund right now as we're having this conversation. I'm in the middle of that. And it never would have been possible if I approached them as an artist, as a creative individual. I came to them and said, I have a business opportunity for you, and it's going to be a crap ton of fun, which all your other investments don't have. So it started with, okay, what do they want? They want to invest in a viable business, not just a project. They don't want to give an artist 10, 100, $1 million, 10,000 or 100,000 or $1 million to go create something, because that's not a business.
No.
So what I had to figure out was, how do I present this package of 4 films as a business, as a viable investment? So I had to look at, okay, what do they want? They want, let's call it a 35% IRR over 5 years. Does everyone in the audience know what that means? And I'm not trying to say that to talk down to you. I'm just saying, I didn't know what that really meant. And so I had to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people who are listening to this would be they're either ex-corporate employees or from the corporate background, so they felt quite high academically able. So they'll understand what that means. So they're basically getting 35% ROI over the next 5 years, which is quite high actually, because the average, considering the average most entrepreneurs aim for is 10 over a year, but that's quite difficult. So usually it's about 5. So 5 to 7 is usually the average a year. So 35 or 37% over 5 years is a very, very good amount.
Yeah, this IRR is the internal rate of return, right? So you're saying basically, I'm going to get your money back 5x in 5 years. I'm going to 5x your money in 5 years. And I'm set up to do that. There's no guarantee. The downside is always 0. But my job is to then limit the downside. So how do I do that in film? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and get guaranteed distribution theatrically for all 4 movies. So I went and did that. I know theatrical distributors here in Utah. I went and I told them about the project and I said, I want to give you guys first swing at each of these 4 movies. All I need from you is a letter of intent saying you will put these 4 films in theaters. They said, great. And they gave me a letter of intent. So all of a sudden I can make back 30 to 40% of my investors' money from theatrical on average. Sometimes you can 5x your money just from theaters, but I at least know I got about 30, 35% of their investment returned because I've guaranteed it. Great. What else? Well, I'm going to shoot in tax advantaged states. So the state of Utah, where I live, there's a 20 to 25% tax credit for filming in the state of Utah, especially depending if you shoot in the rural parts of the state or the urban parts. So off $1 million budget, I could return $200,000 to $250,000. Well, that's another 20 to 25% of my budget. So all of a sudden, before I've spent $1, I've covered 50% or more of the downside. And I still have all these other avenues to getting a return on their investment. Because the fun thing about film is you have a quote unquote exit event with your theatrical release, because you could do 5 or 10 or 20x on your budget just in theaters if it's a big hit. But that's not it. You didn't sell your movie. You still own it. So now for the lifetime of the film, you can license it to Netflix. You can put it on all the flavors of VOD. You can do DVD. You can do streaming. You can do all these other ways, foreign and international sales. There's so many other ways to return an investment and make money on that you get to keep for the lifetime. So without trying to sound like I'm pitching your audience on the film fund, like that's how I'm approaching it as the general partner of this fund, to say, here's how I'm going to get you that 5x return in 5 years. And I lay it out for them. So now I'm having a conversation about a business opportunity, not about creative projects. Believe it or not, I didn't even talk about what the 4 film projects were in the initial conversations with investors, because that's not what it's about.
Exactly. So I mean, I love how you're approaching this. You're coming from not what I need to say, you're coming from the mindset, what do they need to hear? And it's what do they need to know? And as interesting as these 4 projects would be, because I'm an investor and I don't do film, of course, but I mean, I'm doing property and businesses and other things. I'm not that fussed about the business itself. I'm more interested in, okay, what's the risks? Okay, when I put money in, what's my ROI? What are the risks involved? Who is doing it? And what's their credibility, etc. And so it makes no, it doesn't matter unless someone's really, really interested, which most investors won't be. If there's A, B, and C, as long as, you know, okay, fine, it's going to be this, and we've mitigated our risks. And so it's presented as a business opportunity, not, oh, we're so excited, we need to go, which is a big change from someone in the creative industry, because most musicians or artists, they don't have that ability to speak to investors in the tonality, in the way that the investors want to hear. And so this again, same things can be said in a different way, but you need to have the right mindset behind it. How did you pick up this mindset? How did you work on your mindset?
Mindset is like you said, it's 80% of success, right? So I've lived by that for a number of years. And every time I find myself confronting a problem where I'm going, I don't know how to do this, I don't quickly think about, well, I can't because I don't have these resources or this knowledge or these connections or whatever. I immediately turn to, okay, what do I not yet know? And how do I find people who have already done it? Derek Sivers is a friend and an author and this incredible thinker who's written a number of books, but in one of his books, I think it's called Your Music and People, which is about marketing. He talks about calling the destination and asking for directions. It's such a brilliant idea because in anything that we're doing, whether it's real estate investing, business investing, filmmaking, I mean, film's been around since the early 1900s. So this is a proven system that has worked for 120, 130 years. Why am I trying to do it in a new way? That's dumb. Like, let me just call the people who have already done it and figure out how they did it. And so that's kind of what I did. But on the investing side, I'm actually going to pull up my phone because I can't remember. It's Keys of the Something. There's a book by Keith Cunningham, and it's called Keys to the Vault, I want to say, but I just want to be accurate so that it can be in the show notes and stuff. Keys, where are you? Keys to the Vault by Keith Cunningham, Keith J. Cunningham. And that was the book that taught me how to think like an investor. And it was just an amazing read. And it gave me an understanding in 2 days of, oh, I was saying things, but not in their language. So I just shift the language and all of a sudden my conversations are like 80% of them are positive because I'm now speaking their language. And so, like I said, I took out the whole bit about, well, I have this film and this film and this film. They don't care. They don't know how to judge a film, whether it's good or bad or whether it'll make money. They just want to know, oh, well, I can put my money in real estate and get 10 or 12% IRR, or I can put it over here. Yeah, there's more risk, but he's covered the downside. Well, that's interesting. And 35% sounds good. Okay. That's what's the mental math that's going on in their heads. And so it's recently that this happened. I owe a lot of it to that book. So I highly recommend anyone raising money go and read it. But it's really that mindset work of like, I've had a business coach for 2 years. I've gone to conferences and events and seminars to like literally work on my mindset as an entrepreneur and business owner, because I knew that's where I had limitations. And so I see the outcome that I'm looking for and I kind of reverse engineer it. And a lot of that is who already is teaching this or who already has this knowledge or lived experience. And can I just become friends with them and learn from them directly?
Oh, I love that. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's when you started working on your mindset that opportunities started appearing before you, and things which seemed so far away became, started to be turning up around you, and you're meeting the right people, because now you know what to ask for. So when you ask the universe is able to deliver. But if you don't know what you need or what you want, but how can it deliver it to you? And I think this is the key that for a lot of people miss. They keep thinking, I don't have the right connections, I don't have the knowledge, I don't have the know-how, I don't even know how to begin. But the point is, you need to know where you're going, and exactly as the quote you said, figure out where you want to go, and then find find out how you can get there by getting directions or help and so forth. But if you don't know where you're going, you don't. But a lot of times people underplay themselves or sell themselves short because they don't believe that they can get there. So they don't want to think it's too far away, the destination's too far away, and okay, let's not talk about that. Let me just be here in this comfort zone. So entrepreneurs are constantly putting themselves out of their comfort zone, and it's not easy. The life of an entrepreneur is bloody difficult. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone who's faint-hearted. I wouldn't recommend it at all, but the rewards are immense. But you do have to take calculated, not unreasonable, but calculated risks. And you do have to take risks. And not every risk, as I keep saying, don't expect everything to work out always. You will find times when you fall flat on your face. But then that's where the mindset comes in. It comes in and says, okay, let's dust this up. Let's carry on. Tomorrow's a new day. And tomorrow is a new day.
Yeah. Well, and what did you learn from falling down? If you don't learn from it, you're not going to progress and get better. But there's an amazing quote by Daniel Priestley, who's an author and entrepreneur out there in the UK, and love his books. And I've become a friend of his. He was presented at a workshop that I did earlier this year, and such an incredible guy and so generous with his time and knowledge. But he talks about how someone out there has an abundance of the thing that you lack. Yeah. Whether that's money or time or connections or opportunities or whatever it might be. And that was a huge mindset shift for me. That unlocked so much. This fund wouldn't have even been a possibility in my brain had I not really embodied and taken that mindset and just said, no, I want that mindset. I believe that there are people out there who have an abundance of money, meaning they have too much. They don't know what to do with it. They want to find something to do with it. So all of a sudden, then I'm like, oh, well, what if I added a little bit of a cause or a little bit of a personal reason to invest in this beyond the rate of return? Well, it's like, okay, let's make movies that change people for good. Whoa. All of a sudden, it's like, wow, I was connecting with people on a personal level. I could talk about how we're in the middle of a writers and now actors strike in Hollywood.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Everybody's striking because the studios have taken too much and given too little.
Yeah. And
I'm just sitting here going, gosh, there's such an opportunity here. And the fact that this exists shows how broken the industry is. I want to change that. All of a sudden, that becomes a cause. It's a purpose. It's a reason for me to be doing this fund beyond just money. And there are some investors who gravitate more to that than the rate of return because they have such an abundance of money that giving them 35% IRR on their $1 million is like me going to Wendy's for lunch. Like, it's just not a big deal.
Yeah.
And I'm going, okay, I had to unlock that part of the mindset in order for me to get to this point where I'm raising money from, centimillionaires and billionaires, which I never would have been able to get in contact with had I approached it as an artist.
Fabulous. On that note, we can wrap this up. Any parting comments from you about working on your mindset to set and achieve bigger goals?
I think that everyone listening to this has so much more potential than they give themselves credit for. And that's a mindset thing. And so if you were to just pick one mindset, I would pick faith. I would pick believing in yourself. I'd like to define faith as belief coupled with action, because belief on its own is just belief and nothing changes just because you believe it.
Yeah.
And if you take action, you can actually take a lot of action and be really busy and even really efficient, but get no results that really matter. So action doesn't always lead to results. And so you've got to kind of pair those two, belief and action together. That equals faith. And what do you need to have faith in? You need to have faith in yourself. That if you believe in yourself, if you have a desirable goal that you're reaching for that is going to make the world a better place, it's going to improve your life, the lives of others, everyone it comes in contact with, I think that's a really valuable thing that needs to exist in the world. Otherwise, why would you have ever been given that idea in the first place?
Yeah.
And then it's about coupling that massive belief with massive action so that all of a sudden you can start making progress, because you don't make progress just off belief. It has to be made from action, taking steps every single day, making progress every day. And that's what I would ask people to do. If you want to make one shift, start believing in yourself. Take the ceiling off of what you think your potential is, because I guarantee it's 100 times bigger than you ever thought it was. And go after it. Do it unapologetically, do it unrelentingly, and just go after it until it happens. Because like I mentioned briefly, it took me 12 years to produce my first feature film. I had that goal for 12 years. I had a video production company. I went and did TV for 3 years. Like, it took a long time, but it finally happened because I had faith that if I kept going, it would happen. And I attribute a lot of the success of, like, I'm now a full-time film producer to the fact that I just stuck it out for 12 years. Not many people are willing to do that. And that takes a massive amount of faith and belief in yourself. So I would encourage everyone to go do that. If it's a mantra, if it's a meditation, if it's going out and walking and saying, I can do so many awesome things and whatever, like, do what you got to do to, like, ingrain that new mindset into your brain. And that will make a world of difference.
Wonderful. On that note, tell us, Daren, where can we find you? How can we connect with you on the internet?
Awesome. Thank you for that opportunity and chance to chat with you. It's been fun. I'm at Daren T. Smith anywhere on the internet. So I'm mainly on Twitter, sometimes on Instagram. If you want to follow my film stuff, that's where I post my film related behind the scenes pictures on every movie that I work on. And then at craftsmancreative.co is my consulting business and creative business. So I'm an author. I have a book you can read for free. I'm working on another one right now. And so there's a lot of really good resources between a podcast and a newsletter and a blog and book that you can read for free and consume for free over at craftsmancreative.co.
Wonderful. So if you are listening to this on the podcast, the links for Daren just mentioned would be in the show notes. And if you're watching this on YouTube, down below in the description section, we'll have all the links Daren just mentioned. Do check him out and see how he can help you, or, well, inspire you to have a better mindset. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast today, Daren. We have to have you back in Money Talkies, but for today, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's been amazing.
And thank you for listening to me and Daren today. I will be back with another amazing guest on Friday Future, finding out how they changed their life by changing the mindset. Until the next time, this is Gull signing off. Take care and bye for now.